This is Bharat FM.
बजेगा भारत झूमेगा भारत.
ये है भारत FM.
बजेगा भारत झूमेगा भारत.
Namaskar, Sat Sri Akal, welcome and adab. You are listening to Bharat FM, a one-of-its-kind, multilingual, eclectic provider of entertainment, information and news to Indian Americans. Headquartered in Cincinnati, Ohio, Bharat FM airs shows out of Cincinnati, Chicago and Phoenix. We take pleasure in our ability to cater to your bhakti, chusti, sfurti, shakti and masti needs with our audio and visual shows. Check out bharatfm.com for our online program schedule and archives. I'm sure the content will definitely tickle your senses. Tune in via the 24-hour web streaming on bharatfm.com or via the Bharat FM app. More information can be procured at 513-488-5070.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to Storytellers Cafe. Namaste. I'm your host, Usha Venkatraman from Mumbai, India. Coming live this Sunday evening in India, and of course, evening in Doha, Qatar, and morning in the United States. Welcome to Storytellers Cafe. So, how was Pongal? How was the Kite Festival? Did you have fun? And after the long weekend, the Martin Luther King weekend, I think everybody is back on track. And come enjoy Storytellers Cafe, listen to some winter stories, sit with your family, and gather and listen to our stories. As you know, that India is approaching her 73rd Republic Day on the 26th this week. I would just like to give you a little, brief about the Republic Day history. Every year that you know, since 1950, January 26th is celebrated as Republic Day in India. It was on this day in 1950 the Indian Constitution came into existence. Now, I want to share that, of course, the Indian Constitution came into existence. And did you know that the former Chief Justice Leela Seth, the mother of the famous author Vikram Seth, whose book A Suitable Boy has made such an has left an indelible mark on so many young women I think, in India and the world over. So Justice Leela Seth makes the words of the preamble to the Constitution understandable to even the youngest reader. So she tackles these concepts and explains them in a manner that everyone can grasp and enjoy. And I had the pleasure of meeting Leela Seth in Singapore way back in 2014, where I was there for a conference. And it was a pleasure to meet Justice Leela Seth. And she is no more, otherwise, she would definitely be our guest on Storytellers Cafe. Well, with that trivia, let me move on to today's evening. Our guest today evening is Arti Jain from Doha, Qatar. So, let me get Arti onto the screen. Hey, Arti.
Hi.
Good evening.
Good evening, Usha. How are you?
I'm good, and welcome to Storytellers Cafe. And you know, Bombay has a nip in the air. It's cold. So, how is it in Doha? I saw you all wrapped up and bundled the other day.
I'm still wrapped up. I've got a nice jacket with my sari. I had to wear this sari, but I have it with a jacket. It's been very, very nice. I love winters. I'm a Dehraduni, so that is my best time of the year. And we've not had a good winter in Doha for the last 3 years. But luckily, this year, for the last week now, we've had good, nice, cold weather. The kind where you want to have chai and 3 to 4 times a
Absolutely.
day.
Yeah, I know chai. Coming to chai, I'm going to introduce you, Arti, to our viewers and listeners. So, let me introduce Arti Jain, who is Doha based. She's a nature lover, blossomed into a writer, poet, and photography enthusiast. When she started her blog, My Ordinary Moments, in 2013. Recently, Arti published her book, and all the seasons in between. That's the name of the book. Has received glowing reviews from readers and other authors. It is a childhood memoir woven with fantasy. And Arti is going to share some of her memories from that book today. Kindle India Magazine carried her story, Jamun Tree, in 2015. Her writing and photographs have appeared in many anthologies. She performs spoken word poetry regularly on Mirchi Scribbled. You can follow Arti on her Instagram handle, which is already mentioned in our page. Please go there. She has a YouTube channel which is called Arti Jain 28, and also she is available on Facebook. Chai, gardening, and trees keep her grounded. Now, I'm going to take a little leaf out of her own, what would I say, your blog, Arti, which is so interesting, where you say, who am I? You know, I honestly can't say, and I don't know. I'm still trying to find out who I am. And then you tell us, hang on a tick, and you go on to describe. What I love is you talk about having tea, growing trees, tending to the plants, sipping chai. And then you say the ingredients in your chai is ginger or cardamom or tulsi or saffron or a mixture of all. And you sit under your neem tree and read poetry. Now that is bliss. So, Arti, welcome to Storytellers Cafe.
Thank
Great
you.
to have you. And
Thank you.
what's
Thank you.
your story? How did you
All right.
get on this journey?
When we were talking just recently, Usha had mentioned that I stumbled upon storytelling, just quite by chance. And because I had to come here and talk about my journey, I thought about the point that started this storytelling in me. And I think, like a lot of us, I can talk about children who grew up in the Indian subcontinent because that's where I grew up in India. A lot of us, I think, are just so surrounded by stories all the time, and there is no particular time when your grandmother or grandfather sits down and says, now I'm going to tell you a story. Everything is a story. So for example, when I would fall, and there would be my anyone in the house would, "Arey, arey, wo cheaty, that little ant has got injured," and you forget your bleeding knee, and you look at this ant, and then you wonder, is it a tiny ant, is it the mummy ant, is it the sister ant, what happened to that ant, that whole uh, patara of stories that opens up. So I think stories are always within us. And for me, what happened was when I moved to Doha, after living in the UK for many years and bringing up a young family, I took a year off from work, thinking that let me get to know this new surrounding, and enjoy some free time. And in that free time, I sort of became, I wouldn't say I was lonely, but I didn't have the friends I'd left behind in London. I didn't have my family from India. It was a new beginning for me. And I think there was a time when I was like, facing that question, what am I doing? What is it that I want to do? And it was my daughter, who was then a teenager, who said, Mom, you keep talking about your writing plans. Why don't you just start writing? And I said, yeah, but who's going to read it? And she said, yeah, you just write. And my sister as well, she said, just start. So how do I start? She said, just start a blog, Mom. I said, but how do I start a blog? I have no idea. And how teenagers are, oh, it's so easy. So anyway, it was easy. And that's when I started writing. And as the more I wrote, the more there was that I wanted to write about. And then COVID happened in beginning of 2020. And I think, like a lot of other people in the field of arts, this time of sequestering, this pause, gave us all that, freedom to really think about what we love, and also the time to spend on that. And that's where the storytelling part started. And there are many, many anecdotes connected, but these were all the dots that kept connecting. There was a competition by Commune India. They are also based out of Mumbai. And they were looking for, they called it the National Story Slam. And one of my friends mentioned that they're doing this. And I said, I've never sent a story for a competition. Anyway, there were only a few days left. And I had a story that I had been writing for, I would say, 30 years, because I lost my mother 30 years ago. And I've been trying to write that story. And anyway, I sort of wrote that and sent it off. And it got picked. But it was a storytelling competition, not a story writing competition. So when I told the story, I didn't go any further than that. Two things happened: heartache, that, oh my God, I didn't get picked, and realization that writing a story and telling a story are very different. They are linked, but the skills are very different. I'm not a trained actor or a dancer, so I can't bring those elements into my storytelling. How do I present something which is very dear to me, very personal to me, so that you connect with me when you hear my words? So I think that's what that particular rejection taught me. And then, I just carried on. And one more thing I must mention is that during COVID, there's a very famous actor from India, Danish Hussain, who's a theater person, actor, and a wonderful human being. I've never met him, but I do always like to say thanks to him for one simple reason. I think he was stuck in the US for some period of time during the first wave, and he started Insta live sessions where he would invite people to read their stories and share their poetry. And the same friend was on that particular session. And I said, "How did you get to do this? I would like to." She said, "Oh, just send him a message and he'll get in touch." And in my mind, I thought, it's never happening. How is he going to ever get back to me? But he did. And so I felt that, and then that's how I started reciting my poetry, reading my stories, then telling my stories. And I would listen to others and pick. You're always learning, right? You pick things that, oh, next time I should do this. Maybe I should pause a bit more. Don't get so excited. All sorts of things. But the thing that I loved the most is what he said was he believes in the art of appreciation. And he talks about his own journey was based on this art of appreciation. A friend, unknown people, sometimes strangers, coming up to you and saying, "You know what, that story really connected. What you said made me think," or "I loved what you did." And those little, I would say, like, those little beacons that shine in the darkness of creativity keep you going. And that's how I started. And then one thing led to another. And then people I met on those Insta lives. One of them is Parth, who looks after Mirchi Mehfil. He got in touch and he said, "Would you like to send some of your pieces?" And I sent those. And so, as I said, it's just like one link to another link to another link, and the journey continues. And here I am
Wonderful.
today.
Wonderful. May your journey continue with more success and more fame and more literary work that we get to see.
Thank you.
Arti, I met Danish at the Kalagura festival in early 2020, February. After that, we
Right.
haven't had any live thing at the literature festival. So I know he's a wonderful, wonderful, I think, author, writer, as well as an actor. Yes.
Absolutely.
So, Arti, your poem, which was published on Mirchi Scribbled, right?
Mm-hmm.
That
Mm-hmm.
is, so that's a portal. That is. And,
Yeah.
that is got some rave responses from the people, today, when I shared your information today that you're coming live on Storytellers Cafe. So, Could we start with that? And of course, you also published a book recently, which is
Mm-hmm,
wonderful
mm-hmm.
memoirs, and you could share from there. And
Sure.
having worked as a teacher in London,
Mm-hmm.
I would like you to talk about that because, children and England is the home ground for the stories, the fairy tales. They have that magical way of once upon a long,
Yes.
long time ago, and the magic just takes over. So we would like you to, I leave it to you. What would you like to start the session with?
So what I'll do is, I think you shared Mohini with. So what I'll
Yes.
do is, I won't, if it's okay, I won't repeat that here, but I would like to, because it's all about winters and stories, and I would like to keep it, cozy. I'd like to start with a piece that I wrote about my grandfather, who I used to call Papaji, and it's lyrical, but it's a story, and hopefully through that you will get to know more about him, about me, and my childhood. And this poem is the last chapter of my book called And All the Seasons in Between. So if it's okay with you, may I start with?
Absolutely.
Oh, perfect.
Sure. Please, the
Thank you.
stage is yours.
Thank you. So, a little background about this poem. It's called He Carried Dirt Under His Fingernails. And one of the poetry workshops I was participating again online, the word dirt came up as a prompt. And that's, I think, 3 or 4 months later, this poem came about. So I'll start. In the middle of my childhood stood a tree. We called it Shehtut, an English mulberry. Under it sat an old cot, woven with ropes and knots. 4 wooden legs, 8 wooden pegs. Charpai in Hindi, a Punjabi manji. Rays of sun filtered through a sky of blue to dance with the bulbuls and sing with you. They tickled the leaves on mulberry's branches and fell in jagged lines and patches on the manji's frayed squares and snatches. Papaji sat on this old cot among rose bushes, sunflowers, and other plants he loved a lot, and called out to us, his grandchildren three, to eat the first morsel of every lunch and every afternoon tea in summers hot and autumns that were not. Papaji was born in the valley of Shinkyari. He called it Jannat, the most beautiful place there ever could be. It always was and still is exactly where it should be, he used to say. But a line drawn in pen by mere mortal men wielded such powers of division that it moved Papaji's birthplace to a newborn nation. Artu, grai le ja. No matter where in the house I was, I'd run to reach his fingers four and a thumb that held the first bite of his lunch for me. He'd tear corners of rotis, dip them in dal and ghee, and sometimes even add a little chutney. He'd pucker his lips to feed the bite. I'd eat, but he'd delight in my appetite. I'd see his fingers brown and his eyes browner, shining like the dappled sun in our mulberry tree. He'd ask if I'd like another. I'd nod, and he'd get busy preparing bite sized feasts for me. A bit of gur, some more ghee, a little sweet, a little savory. Waiting patiently for Papaji's assembly, I'd see dewdrops gather at the edge of his ecstasy. Satisfied, he'd say, Puttar, aakar. I'd obey, and he'd beam with such satiety. Or hun aega khaan da maza. He'd eat his first bite then. Sometimes I'd spot the dirt under his fingernails and ask, Why don't you ever clean them? He'd laugh, his farmer's laugh, and say, Oh, putra, ਇਹ ਤਾਂ ਬਸ ਮਿੱਟੀ ਏ ਉਹ ਮੈਂ ਵੀ ਮਿੱਟੀ ਆ ਤੇ ਤੂੰ ਵੀ ਤਾਂ ਮਿੱਟੀ ਏ. This dirt, he'd say, sometimes seeing far away into a land much beyond our mulberry, was the only thing he could carry from his beloved Shinkyari, his Hirayat, his haven, the land of his ancestors alive in him still, that much I could see. He missed it a lot. So he grew pomegranate trees in this plot he'd bought when he'd saved enough money to recreate the heaven he called home before partition. Papaji died with dirty fingernails after etching indelible images of binds and burdened veils in all of his grandchildren's hearts and in all of their once upon a time tales. Under the mulberry that stood in the middle of my childhood still sits Papaji's manji. At least that's how I see it. And whenever I think of him, I taste his garaiya. Thoda khand, thoda kyo, a smidgen of chutney, a little sweet, a little savory, and relish his pristine refugee memory of the land that was snatched away from him by a line drawn in pen by mere mortal men. It turned him into an uprooted tree, forever seeking his mitti. Now, now that he's free of body and nails, he must be sat on a mat or a manji under a mulberry tree in his beloved Shinkyari. That was it, Usha. Thank you so much for listening.
That was awesome. Awesome. Arti, so lyrical. And you interspersed Hindi, Punjabi, I guess even the Pahadi into it, and so seamlessly flowing. It was so soothing, lyrical, and so lovely to hear. Like you said, it was story, you know, it was somewhere there was prose interspersed with poetry. And that brings me to my question: how did you get to writing poetry? Not everyone delves into this.
Yes, I really don't have an answer to that question, except for the fact that I love reading poetry. So if I were to ask, what would your ideal life be? Books of poetry on an island, with enough food to eat and no one to talk to. That would be like, oh, my bliss. Maybe with some internet connection too, But yeah, so I've always loved reading poetry. Recently, I've been not recently. I think as since I've been entered my 40s, I got more into Rumi, got into more the kind of poetry that talks about your connection to God in however which. So Kabir and Meera. My mother was a poetry lover as well. So Meera ke bhajan, we grew up with those kind of I'm sure most Indian homes are surrounded by poetry and song. Bollywood is a prime example of poetry, popular poetry, right?
Yes.
So yeah, so I don't know when I started, but whenever sit down to write, it just comes naturally. Even in my prose, there is it's lyrical. So yeah, that's the
So,
answer.
poetry, the Indian poets have inspired you, like Harivansh Rai. See, honestly, I don't know about many poets in the Hindi. Of course, I know Gulzar Saab, and of course, Sahir Ludhianvi. I mean, they were all, right? Whatever lyricist,
Yes,
there is
yes,
poetry
yes,
in.
yes, yes.
So, is it
No,
Indian poetry that has inspired you?
yes, I would think that again, we are global citizens. So wherever you go, you're drawn to what interests you. So I would say Meera buys bhajan. When I was young, we used to prepare them for elocution lessons, or so those. Of course, those were very literal when we were learning, and then as you grow older, then the sense of it, the meaning of it starts percolating into your soul, right? That's when you pick up a book and you just sit with it, four lines of Rumi, and you can spend a month on them, right? I mean, that's how I read poetry.
Okay.
And because you don't have to pass an exam or impress anyone with your knowledge or quote anything, you can really enjoy it. And so that is why when I talk to people, I may come across as a real unpad, because I can't quote things, or I can't remember poets' names, or I can't remember authors' names. But the essence of what they've written is all here. So I think I'm done. So yes, so Kabir's Dohe, Mirabai's poetry, Ramayan, all lyrical, right? All
Absolutely.
Surdas,
They were all
uh,
the epic poems.
all the epic poems. So
Yeah.
you grew up with that, and then a lot of poetry in our songs, like my Punjabi songs, marriage songs, things that I heard. I would always be the kid. They used to call me the, enthu cutlet, always with that chammach. So I'm not good at singing, but that didn't matter. So I had to join in, and I had to go tuck tuck tuck, and I would sing at the top of my voice, and that's the joy of being in a family. You don't have to impress anyone, and everybody, "Arey beta, gao gao," but even if you're singing, like, but so those songs, I think that all. And then when I went to the UK, and I started, I trained to become a primary school teacher. That had always been my dream. But once I went there, I could fulfill that dream. I was moving from corporate world to into teaching. And one of the first things I started reading to my children, I call them my children as in my students, was poetry. And in the UK, you have, Spike Milligan is there, and then there is Paul Cookson, Roald Dahl, all these wonderful poets who wrote such simple poetry. And it was fun to read. It was fun to connect, and for the younger ones with the rhythm and rhyme, that connection comes very easily. So yeah, so I maybe all this sort of was already working in the background. When I started writing, it just sort of came forth. I think that's my answer.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. Sometimes things just fall into place organically. Little do you know something, but just things fall into place. So, Arti, um, since you mentioned about your teaching stint in the primary school in England, in London especially, is there any story that's something that you would like to share with us, with our viewers?
Absolutely. Now, I have been very clever, and I was thinking about which story would I like to share with you today. And I have brought, I'm not going to read this, but this was my favorite when my children were little, and when I taught the younger end of primary. So I think a lot of us are familiar with this. It's called the Gruffalo, by Julia Donaldson. And Julia Donaldson is like the go-to author for any picture book, beautiful, beautiful writing. But what I've decided to read to you today is a chapter from my book, which is very much a mixture of my memoir and the Once Upon a Time kind of tale. And I thought, I have not read it out to anyone yet. And it's something that would work well here. And when I was in teaching in the primary, so the younger children would definitely want to, even the older the ones would always love picture books, but the older ones like grades 5 and 6, what we would do is we would start a book for a term. And then the last 20 minutes of a day, which would be just before home time, they would sit on the carpet and I would sit on my chair. And we would just get lost in that storytelling. And when I think back of my teaching days, that is the time that I miss the most, you know? So again, going back to the power of storytelling, it's everybody connects with what is being read, what is being said, because we are all, after all, stories, right? So, all right, let me read you the piece that I thought I will today. And you've met my grandfather, Papaji, and through this story, you will meet my grandmother, Beji. And the chapter on the story is called Queendom of Kitchen. I'll start. It's slightly longish, but I hope you'll enjoy it. Many monsoons ago, sorry, I need my glasses for this. Many monsoons ago, the Queendom of Kitchen flourished under the most powerful queen of all times called Beji. Her kingdom bloomed in the Valley of Doom. The green, green valley lay nestled between the mountains high of the Himalayas in the north and the hills of Shivaliks in the south. It is said that a river called Respina gurgled through the valley, and that her sweet water kept all the lychees and all the mangoes of the valley of Doon juicy and delicious. The queendom was small and neat. Everything had a place, and there was a place for everything. Legends claim that Beji, the most capable, adhered to very strict rules of conduct inside the queendom. Foolish ministers who forgot those rules were punished severely. They were given clear and precise warnings to mend their ways, and if they continued with their follies, sharp arrows of taunts were fired by Beji. The two most important ministers of the Queendom of Kitchen, who were known by their names of Mummy and Chachi, could sometimes be heard whispering to each other out of earshot. Don't we have anything else to do all day? One minister would goad the other. Who will look after the princesses' education and their training in the fine art of recall of times tables? And why is Chula Chonka the most important portfolio in Her Majesty's eyes? The other would add ghee to the fire of discontent. The princesses of the land where Beji ruled from her throne in the Chonka thought the ministers to be too uptight and not at all fair. Beji was, after all, the most benevolent, the most kind, and the most awesome maker of kheer. Stories of praise for Beji's kheer, maa ki dal, parathe, and rajma traveled far and wide. So messengers from all four directions, from countries and kingdoms of the west, the north, the south, and the east, were sent on secret missions to steal her masale ka dabba. It was believed by one and all that Beji, the most ingenious, stored her magical powers in the dabba when she retired to the inner chambers for her siesta every afternoon. Rulers of lesser kitchens, the emperor of the not so tasty foodland, heads of states of Inediblabad and Pikapur, as well as the Nawab of Beswadganj, were the first ones to send their spies. Some say that Chote Nawab Sahib of Beswadganj came himself, disguised as a cousin thrice removed. The most amazing and the most clever Beji would graciously grant an audience to all those who called upon her. Proudly wearing her crown of the whitest, sparkling pure chiffon chunni, Queen Beji would order her ministers to serve the visitors feasts of freshly prepared food. Hot paneer ke paranthe, crispy on the outside but soft on the inside, stuffed with malaidar paneer, flavored with zeera, fresh coriander, chilies, and ajwain, topped with fluffy white butter, would be served with a tall glass of lassi to the messengers. The parade of paranthe, aam ka achar, and dahi didn't stop till the very last millimeter of every messenger's tummy was stuffed to the brim. So powerful was the magic in Beji's food that the spies would postpone their missions of stealing spice secrets and ask ministers Mummy and Chachi for a manji to rest. The princesses could hear them snoring, sometimes even melodiously, under the mighty mulberry in the royal gardens. After their long naps, the messengers would wake up fresh and rejuvenated, mysteriously forgetting all about their mission and the masale ka dabba. Tasty treats from Beji's kitchen would resume their procession as soon as the inhabitants of the kingdom and the visitors had shaken off their siesta slumbers. In the evenings, Minister Chachi was entrusted with the important task of preparing and serving garam garam cha, infused with vaddi lychee, brown cardamom, and adrak. She'd strain this elixir of energy into tall steel glasses and serve them with besan barfi and namak pare, a combination so scrumptious it had the visitors salivating at the very thought. Tea or cha, prepared in Beji's kitchen using ingredients lovingly gathered and stored by her or by her ministers, had such rejuvenating qualities that those who drank it always felt as good as new afterwards. Fevers, coughs, upset tummies, and even broken hearts could be fixed with a steaming hot cup of tea prepared under Beji, the wise one's supervision. Some believed that the magic lay in the chaka patila, the pan in which the tea was being prepared. Others pointed to Beji's culinary sorcery, which she kept as a closely guarded secret to be revealed only to the most deserving of her ministers when the time was right. Secrets are never hidden, they are always revealing themselves. If only you'd pay attention, Beji the philosopher would sometimes say. So while the world outside hunted for her masale ka dibba and the patila responsible for the powerful tea, those close to her knew that Beji's magic was visible in plain sight. Over time, the ministers started absorbing her methods and even learned the tea tables of common household remedies by heart. They often tested each other while taking turns to pound the pestle to make coriander chutney with walnuts and dried pomegranate seeds in the Nikka Vera, the small courtyard, next to the kitchen where the young guava tree nodded its supple branches to rap rhythm of the minister's song. Tulsi, ginger get rid of fever, fennel fixes stomach pain, boil tea with brown cardamom and chase away all period pain. And if one morn your throat feels torn, crush a few black peppercorns, add an inch of cinnamon stick, and watch how quickly the tea does the trick. Despite their grudges and the long, long hours of court attendance, Minister Mummy and Minister Chachi agreed wholeheartedly that the most brilliant Beji was the best maker of food in all of the lands. One day, the little princess, who was very, very hungry, came running into Beji's chonka and asked for food. The two ministers were busy looking into the urgent matters of drying laundry in the royal gardens. So Beji was by herself. Aja, bear puttar, come, sit child, she said, without turning around from the chulla, where a roti was bellowing up with air. Thoda chir sabar kar, be patient for a bit. The princess watched as Beji the fearless picked the hot, phula hua pulka off the tawa with her bare fingers and placed it on a steel thali where two other rotis were lying folded up like pocket squares. Ik ਕਾਂ ਦੀ, ik ਕੁੱਤੇ ਦੀ, te ik ਕਾਂ ਦੀ. One for the cow, one for the dog, and one for the crow. Beji, the fair one, counted the rotis. Then she picked up the balan and rolled out one for the princess. When the princess had eaten and the ministers were back to take charge of the chulla, the most kind Beji said, "Aa mere naal," and asked the princess to join her. They walked hand in hand, crossing the cemented grey land of Nikkaveda, passing under the guava tree at the edge, stepping across the bricked expanse of Vaddaveda, till they reached the very edge of the kingdom, right where the big metal gate stood. The most gentle Beji opened the gate and fed cow first. She mooed her thank you. Next, she put the roti on the ground for dog. He wagged his tail and looked happy. Hun kaan diwari. Now it's crow's turn. She told the princess and started breaking the last roti into small little pieces so Crow would have no trouble in picking them off the Veda and the Chajja, the veranda and the overhang, with his beak. For many years, in the land ruled by Beji the most generous, her subjects enjoyed delicious food cooked by her. And every day, for as long as she cooked, cow, dog, and crow got their share before any adult human did. The Respana can be heard singing Beji's praises even today as she recalls a time when the valley of Doon was green, clean, and abundant for all who called it home. Thank you.
Bravo, bravo, Arti. I loved it. The Valley of Doon. Dehradun is a favorite place of mine. I love going to, right there where our author friend lives in that
Oh,
beautiful
Ruskin Bond. Mhm.
Ruskin Bond in
Mhm.
above Missouri.
Landor. Yeah, Masuri, Landor.
Landor. I
Yeah.
love that place, been there a couple of times, and it's a beautiful, not a homestay, a lovely hotel there, which was actually, I believe, a hospice in the
Okay.
British era,
Okay.
and which has been, of course, now it's a hotel. Beautiful place. I love the Doon Valley with the mountains and the snow-clad mountains facing. Oh, beautiful. And what a story. You painted such a vivid picture of the kitchen kingdom, queendom, like you say, and BG and the ministers. Beautiful. I loved listening. See, this is the words are very powerful, but words well written, well spoken, uh, take you to a different level altogether. Thank you. Really enjoyed it. And I'm sure our viewers, our listeners have also enjoyed this. Such a pleasure.
Thank you.
Um, Arti, this was beautiful when I told you to tell a story for children, but this is like, there is another story that I love to tell little ones. It's, of course, it's about the gingerbread man, but different versions of that. So, how the little
Hmm.
old woman sits in the kitchen and then takes this little bit of flour, she, scrubs the floor of the pot and, scrubs the side of the pot and gets
Hmm.
just a little bit of flour, and then how she kneads the dough, and then how she puts it in the oven and how it rises. So how the chapati rose
The
up,
bell.
and the roti, yes, beautiful. So it's so wonderful because I think what we do with stories is we paint pictures. That's
Absolutely.
why we don't show them any kind of props.
Yes.
Initially in my career, I used a lot of puppets. I mean, I still
Hmm.
use because I
Hmm.
have hundreds of them lying at home, and it's always a pleasure to take them out, dust them, and use them. But when you just paint pictures with your words, there's nothing that's incomparable to this. It's
True.
it's just wonderful. Picture books, of course, have their own
Yes.
space,
Yeah.
but I think words just sinking in, let it sink in, and listening to the cadence, to the pacing, to the musical, lyrical quality of the words. That's something else altogether. And you brought it live here on Bharat FM Storytellers Cafe for us. Thank you so
Thank you.
much. It's
Thank you
like,
for listening.
yeah.
Thank
It's
you
like
for
you want to
listening.
take a pause, Sometimes when something is so beautiful, you just want to sink in.
Yes.
Let it
Yes.
sink in. Yes.
Yeah, yeah. No, and
Lovely.
what you sorry, sorry,
Go on.
Usha, what you said about words, I just realized I think I've lost my bindi. But what you said about words also is that as we all, I think, who write are also book lovers, right? And why does a film that has been based on that book never does justice to the book you've read, to the play that you've read, because words, when they get inside you, then you become the creator of that world. How you play with this, what images come into your head is entirely your creation. You're the
Absolutely.
king of that world. Whereas when you're watching something like a picture or a film, someone else has done that job, and then you're just as a you're not really participating. Yeah, as a creator, you are just watching someone else's creation. So that I think that is why, exactly as you said, when it's just words creating those worlds, it's so
Yeah.
much more effective, right?
And your spices. I was
Mhm.
just recently listening to a podcast by a very dear friend's daughter who will be my guest. It's
Right.
called Bound India, and they had interviewed um, Amitav Ghosh, and
Hmm.
his latest book was about the nutmeg's curse. The
Okay.
nutmeg's curse. And it's a beautiful book about climate change. And
Ah.
I had actually, sent my proposal to an international festival on earth care, earth up
Hmm.
stories. So I was just doing a little bit of research on that, and I came across this podcast, and it was beautiful. Actually, uh, the two wonderful ladies out there had done so much intense research about climate change and all, and this taking this piece about the nutmeg's curse. So when I was listening to you, all the spices, the cardamom, that lyrical thing that you brought in, adrak and elaichi, and those words, the Hindi interspersed with Punjabi or Hindi, I think that is what made it something kind of superlative, I would say very unique to hear. Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm still reeling under the pleasure of listening to such wonderful prose.
Thank you.
You know?
Thank you. It's such an
Yeah,
honor, and it's so beautiful to hear that because, again, growing up in India, I keep going back to that. But as any part of the world, the language that you assimilate becomes you, right? What language I have assimilated and what someone who's even 3 doors down from me has assimilated is very different. So the more we are honest to what makes us, I think that connects. At least that's what I feel. And
absolutely.
it's so easy to write that because you're not pretending to be someone else. This is who I am, and this is my story. So yeah, but thank you so
Wonderful.
much. That was really lovely to hear.
I would like to reiterate here for all our listeners and viewers, please do get a copy of Arti's book. There is a Kindle version. You can go to amazon.com, that's in India, and amazon.in the US, right? You have it on both uh,
Yes, yes.
or is it the other way around?
The other
Sorry.
way, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yes. So you can get her copy because I'm going to get my copy because this
Thank
is
you.
wonderful. And I'm not really very savvy with the Kindle version. I like to hold the book in hand, smell it,
Yes.
and then it speaks because your story is kind of invigorating to the senses, especially, the sense of smell, sense of
Mm,
taste,
mm.
right? And also
Yeah,
maybe the sense of hearing as they're being cooked,
yes,
spluttered and
yes,
splattering, while
yes.
you're doing. And that's the beauty of stories. This reminds me, I did a workshop in Scotland. And this was centered around Greek stories, Cypriot stories. So these
Mm,
are the islands in the Mediterranean,
mm,
and
mm,
what's there, all the citrus fruits, your
mm.
lemon, lime. So when you do a session, you keep all these flavors, with
Right.
you. And that's another way to break the ice of smelling
Mm,
these, and then getting plunging into it. Say maybe it's a Cypriot folk tale or a Greek
mm,
story, folk
mm.
tale or a legend or a myth, that's evocative. So,
Yes.
and that's what your story was to me. Thank you
Lovely.
so
Thank you.
much. But
Thank you.
mm, before we end, Arti, I'm
Mm-hmm.
going to throw you a googly. Um, Now, I know I don't, I just kind of put my guests in a spot, but I'm sure you'll be more than able to rise up to this challenge. It's something from your writing, if you can connect. See, we're
Mm-hmm.
all going through a storm,
Mm-hmm.
and we do give up hope, you know. See, hope, I read somewhere, hope is a tease designed to prevent us accepting reality. The
Wow.
whole of last year, I spoke about this too shall pass,
Hmm.
about hope, Pandora's box, and the story of hope rising there, and she's there. But as you see that this pandemic is still continuing, and somebody said it's become an endemic now.
Hmm.
Hope is a tease designed to prevent us accepting reality. Harsh reality is better than false hope.
Hmm.
So, something, and this kind of resonated with me at this
Yeah.
juncture. At this
Mm,
juncture.
mm, mm. Uh, but I also believe that, again, going back to Pandora's box, the story there, the whole point of that was that we have the reality, the harsh, brutal, sometimes ugly reality. But if that were the only side of humanity, uh, we wouldn't be doing what we're doing today. We wouldn't be telling stories. We wouldn't be connecting. It's the hope that keeps us going. So again, I think the importance is not false hope, but hope. I think hope in itself is, I think it was Emily Dickinson who calls hope a winged bird. I think I remember putting an Insta post once. I saw we were in Seattle, and it had just spring had just started, and the first snowdrop had raised its head, and I just put a title: "Hope is a snowdrop." Despite the winter, despite the struggle, despite everything, if we don't have that, what do we have? We won't we all just turn, as it is, it's a cynical world. As it is, we are all on a macro level, the narrative is so political, so divisive, so polarized, that if you just heard that only, humanity, as the fabric of humanity, is actually tearing apart, right? I think it's these personal stories, hope, and these personal stories that are the little the beacons that are saying that, hey, this is why we are here. This is what makes us human. It's not the politics. It's, yes, we can't go away from the politics. It's the blanket that covers us all. We are not all going to the Himalayas and taking sannyas, but it's this. So yeah, false hope, I totally agree. I don't want it. I want to face my reality. But I want to dream as well. So I don't know if that makes sense, but
No, it does. It does. At the same time, while you were talking this, I remembered making, that Thich Nhat Hanh passed away, just yesterday, 22nd, early morning. And since I'm still jet lagging, I wasn't able to sleep. And I got the news from Reuters as early as 4 a.m. or 3:30 a.m., India time. And then this quote stood out for me that if you know how to suffer, you suffer much, much less. And then you know how to make good use of suffering to create joy and happiness.
absolutely.
So for
Absolutely.
me, it's a rhetorical answer to my
Yeah.
thing that the
Yeah.
harsh reality.
Yeah.
And don't just cling to hope. No,
Yeah.
from suffering, if you know how to suffer, then you suffer much, much less. And from that suffering emanates, creates joy and happiness.
Absolutely.
And that's what
Absolutely.
we do at
Mm.
Storytellers Cafe,
Mm-hmm.
to give the listeners that 45 minutes, 1 hour of
Mm.
not escapism, just to enjoy life, you know,
Absolutely.
and
Absolutely.
enjoy it through stories, because stories are so, so therapeutic.
Absolutely.
Stories, yeah, you would agree with me.
I
So,
do.
and Arti, any last words that you would like to share with us, our
Uh,
viewers?
I if do we have about three minutes, or we are running
Sure,
out of
sure.
time? 3 minutes.
We
So
have lots of time. We
okay,
have, there is no embargo on time.
okay, because you mentioned hope and suffering, and the fact that it's our choice, right? I mean, we suffering. How do you harness that into creativity? And if you look at any poetry that touches your heart, any piece of art that touches your heart, it was birthed from suffering. It birthed from some suffering. If it were all happy or everything was fine, we lived happily ever after the end. Who's going to buy that story or listen to it? So, keeping that in mind, not that this is a very light piece, I'd written about, as you can see, I'm very fond of food from all the writing. It's a short piece, and it's about image of what we like a belly. So I thought maybe if it's okay and we're not running over time, could be my last piece to read before we end the session. Again, I'll leave it to
Absolutely.
you. Oh,
No, no, no.
perfect.
Please go ahead. Go ahead.
Thank you. So this also got a lot of hits on the Mirchi Mehfil YouTube channel, and I think it resonated with a lot of us. And it's called Wibbly Wobbly Belly. I'll start. Chubby cheeks, golu molu, laddu, moti. Terms I'm familiar with. That's what people called me when they didn't call me Arti. Mostly, I didn't mind, for I was mummy's soni kuri. But my wibbly wobbly belly which wasn't wibbly wobbly at all when I was 3, 13, and 23, heard those body shaming words and took them personally. Soon after my son was born and I turned 30, I noticed a rebellion put up by my then tic tac tummy. It refused to budge from its dharna and stretched beyond accepted periphery, claiming and marking its rightful territory. The signs of struggle were now visible clearly. I treaded on treadmills, clambered up hills, swam lengths of pools, and even the breath gave up carbs, treats, sugars, and sweets, battling constantly with this thing called inner strength. But my wibbly wobbly belly didn't give up. It held on to those shameful words uttered so long ago, like sharp, painful treasures undimmed by time, and converted them into fat cells that wibbled and wobbled under the skin I should have owned and loved as mine. I tried everything, but it didn't surrender to my wishful dreams. It stood steadfast as a satyagrahi. It didn't melt, not an inch, but spread instead into a wibbly wobbly belly. I hated it, berated it, even pinched its sides, those infamous love handles. Who loves those, I'd like to ask? Then one morning, after showering, I stood facing the bedroom mirror and not knowing why, I did it. I cradled my wibbly wobbly belly in the palms of my hands and thanked it for my son and my daughter, for the gurgles and the laughter, for hosting my intestines, for keeping the bladder, the spleen, and all those unseen miracles of nature in place and pristine, for seamlessly nurturing the regions of umbilical and the hypogastrium, the ovaries and the uterus, and all the spaces and the parts that made me a mum. I swear, I swear I heard my wibbly wobbly belly sigh. Sigh a big sigh of relief, and cradled in the palms of my hands, she congratulated me and said, "You've come a long way, baby. Thank you."
Loved it, Arti. I love the wibbly wobbly. Don't we? I too am belong to the same club. Absolutely. And that reminded me of the theme for this year's International Women's Day is hashtag break the bias.
Ah.
you know well, like, we are all preparing for it. We've been approached by a corporate house to do a workshop for the women employees.
Mhm.
So this is a wonderful topic, and it's wonderful. Is this poem in your anthology of poems, or is it?
Yeah, it's on Mirchi Mehfil. It's on their channel, YouTube channel. Yeah.
Okay. Oh, we are getting lovely, lovely comments, Arti. They
Oh,
loved
I have
your
to get
thing.
my
One can
glasses.
really enjoy if you embrace suffering as a part of, yeah, parcel of your life. Oh, wonderful. That was one. There were some more. There are a lot of comments, live comments, listeners, viewers. There somebody says, Arti, loved this narration. You're amazing. Please drop in your comments. Your response feeds us,
Mhm.
our creativity to come out with new, introduce new tellers. Oh, Shanti is written. Hey, Shanti, love you. Shanti was the one who connected both of us. Such
Exactly.
beautiful narration and lyrics.
Thank you,
Shanti,
Shanti. Thank you.
thank you for listening in. So wonderful, wonderful to see and read those comments. So please do drop in your comments. We would love to hear from you. Go right there. Don't wait. Straight, get the book from the Kindle version, or the book version from Amazon. There you go. It has. So I just was asking you, your poems are anthology. Have you published your poems, or they are
I
just?
have. I haven't. I'm still looking for. I'm looking for a publisher who would, because I have a whole bunch of Hindi poetry as well. But you know how it is. It's not always easy. But I would like to point out this. This book is called the Kali Project, and it's an anthology of poetry, and there's a lot of beautiful poetry in this. One of my poems, I was talking to you about this lady who's a model for JJ Valaya School of Arts. I saw a little clip of her on her life, and it sort of inspired me to write about her. So one of my poems is in this anthology. But no, my poems are still waiting to be published. But on Mirchi Mehfil, a lot of my spoken word pieces are out there. So yeah.
Wonderful. Definitely. Please go there and listen to or read Arti's poem. You amazing, wonderful,
Thank you.
wonderful author, Arti, and also an amazing storyteller. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And you're
Thank
listening to
you.
Storytellers Cafe. Our guest tonight is Arti Jain from Doha, Qatar, a beautiful, beautiful country. I've had the privilege of visiting Doha twice in my life. And stay tuned to Storytellers Cafe. We have interesting guests from across the Arabian Sea, as well as within the within India itself. It's a pleasure. There are so many Indians and such wonderful storytellers. And Storytellers Cafe is a platform, Arti, to promote Indian tellers and give them a global platform so that the global Indian diaspora gets to hear them, listen to them, and and also savor them. And it's such a proud thing. And I thank Bharat FM for giving us this wonderful
Absolutely.
platform. It's never ceasing. My list of storytellers keeps on and
Thanks.
on extending. There is such a long line. I have to reach out. So all the dear friends out there, you will get a chance. Have patience, sabar rakho, shraddha and saburi. So be a little patient, and you will get here eventually. Yes. Thank you, Arti.
Thank you
Wishing you
so
a
much, Yusha. Thank you so much, and thank
wonderful.
you, Bharat FM. And this was such a pleasure. And I'll once again mention Shanti for putting us in touch, And I can't imagine, I can't believe it's been an hour. And I know, I don't know how it was for you because you're still struggling with your jet lag. But for me, it just went, so quickly. So I loved it. Thank you so much.
No, no, my jet lag has also vanished. I thought maybe I should have a cup of coffee, but I'm going to go and have my melatonin after this. I need to have a good night's sleep because I'm driving everyone crazy here, sleeping during the day. So, Arti, been such a pleasure, and I want to wish everyone a happy Republic Day, 73rd Republic Day. Please stay safe, wear your masks, but go out and do enjoy. Don't go to crowded places, you know, maintain social distancing, wear gloves if you please, and wash your hands, and be safe. Like our previous guest said, don't be scared, but be careful. Don't be fearful, be careful. And that, I think, should be the slogan for this year, you know. So, with that, we end our show. Thank you, Arti, so much
Thank
once
you.
again.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Namaskar, Sat Sri Akal, welcome and adab. You are listening to Bharat FM, a one of its kind, multilingual, eclectic provider of entertainment, information, and news to Indian Americans. Headquartered in Cincinnati, Ohio, Bharat FM airs shows out of Cincinnati, Chicago, and Phoenix. We take pleasure in our ability to cater to your bhakti, chusti, sfurti, shakti, and masti needs with our audio and visual shows. Check out bharatfm.com for our online program schedule and archives. I'm sure the content will definitely tickle your senses. Tune in via the 24-hour web streaming on bharatfm.com or via the Bharat FM app. More information can be procured at 513-488-5070.
This is Bharat FM.
बजेगा भारत झूमेगा भारत.
ये है भारत एफएम।
बजेगा भारत, झूमेगा भारत।